Hey everybody, out here in the tackle room today, sort of getting ready. I got a few instructional jerkbait fishing trips lined out later in the week, sort of getting everything prepared for those tournaments. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to take a little bit of time and share with you some tips on how to modify your jerkbaits for wintertime bass fishing. And like I said, I've always said that jerkbait fishing is probably the most difficult technique to master because there's so many variables to the technique, to the areas, to the bait. It's just never ending. I really can't think of any other technique that has as many controlled variables to it as jerkbait fishing does. But what I wanted to do today is to give you a few tips on modifying these baits for wintertime fishing. First of all, one of the things you need to remember when you're fishing in the wintertime is you need to focus on the cleanest water you can find. You're always going to get more bites when that water temperature is down in the 40s in the cleanest water you can. And in doing so, it's important to get that bait to the maximum depth. And a lot of the times you do that with line size. I like to use light line in the wintertime, 6 to 8 pound test line. And the spinning rod. Everybody knows I use a spinning rod because you can simply make a lot longer casts, particularly if it's windy out, and you can just control and work the bait a lot better. Most everybody that I take out on instructional trips, once they see the benefits of spinning tackle, they go to it. And I use the Megabass Oroshi whip snake spinning rod, which is a 6 foot 10 inch medium action, which is just perfect for a jerkbait. But anyway, a little bit on the bait itself. I use nothing but Megabass jerkbaits. I don't use any other type of jerkbaits in my jerkbait fishing. And right out of the box, they catch fish tremendously. You don't have to do anything to them, they'll catch fish. But I like to tweak mine just a little bit. Now, this has come from experience, specifically fishing here in the Ozark areas, some things that I found work better. And I sort of want to show you a little bit what I do. And for example, this is the Megabass 110 plus 2, which I'm going to probably be fishing a lot later in the week. This is the stock bait, the way it's set up. The stock Megabass hooks on it. This is the Pro Blue color, very popular, but this is the way the bait looks right out of the box. Now, I've taken this same bait, and here's my modification of the bait, as you can see here. And I'm going to sort of show you what I've done here a little bit. Here's the original on top and the modification on the bottom. Now, what I've done, the first thing, is what I like to do to not only on all my jerkbaits, but to all my lures, is I like to Dole the Finish on them a little bit. Because you notice a lot of times baits that you get they look like they've been beat up and everything to get more bites. I'm a firm believer in that. So what I do right off the bat is I'll take just like a regular kitchen pad like this, and I'll simply lightly go over the bait, just sort of rough that finish up a little bit. And that gives me, like I said, a little bit more of a, well, you can sort of see there, it's just a little bit more of a natural look to it. Second thing I like to do on most of my jerkbaits is I like to take red fingernail polish and I like to paint Gills on the bait. This just sort of gives a little bit of a focal point, particularly on days that a little bit cloudy, windy, that type of thing, or if you're getting these fish that are just getting hooked by the back treble on there. A lot of times jerkbait fishing is notorious for getting these short strikers, and that little red focal point sometimes will get that fish to hit that bait a little bit up more on the head. And the third thing I've done this is, you can notice if you look at the hooks, the top bait's got the stock Megabass hooks, which are awesome. These stock Megabass hooks are super, super sharp. Once you get them in the fish, they don't come out. And I like these baits under I like the hooks, to use these hooks under certain conditions, particularly if I'm fishing for smallmouth or spotted bass that have a little bit smaller, softer mouths. Sometimes I'll use that. But if I'm fishing a lake that's got a lot of largemouth, I usually upgrade my hooks. And these are the Gamakatsu G Finesse trebles. These are the number 4s. I got 3 number 4 sets on it. And the reason I use this in the wintertime a lot of times is the Megabass jerkbaits are so well balanced and precise, is they'll suspend with these stock Megabass hooks on it. But these Megabass hooks, they're a wire hook, excuse me, a little bit lighter, which allows the bait to suspend. But once you put the, the bigger hooks on it like this, it'll sink a little bit in the water column. And I like that a little bit sometime in the wintertime, because I like my jerkbaits to sink a little bit because I can control the depth out of them. So a lot of times I'll upgrade that instead of using the suspend strip. So, you can do the same thing. You can use the stock Megabass hooks and put the suspend strips on it. But you can also accomplish the same thing by upgrading the hook a little bit on that. So these are, 3 modifications that I use for my wintertime jerkbait fishing. And like I said, a lot of this is because I'm looking for depth attainment, and I'm looking for the visual strike appeal. Because in the wintertime, when you're focused on that really clear water, a jerkbait is a strike-oriented lure. I mean, you can generate the strike as far as, from a little bit of sound, whether it be the internal bearings, or the hooks, clanging against the bait or whatever. There's a little bit of displacement, water displacement, that'll attract the fish from a distance. But primarily, I'm wanting this bait to be sight-oriented, because in my opinion, once you get into a good area, say for example, you're fishing a main lake point that you've caught fish on before, you can pretty much guarantee that there's fish living on that point if you're throwing a jerkbait on it in the wintertime. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of bass that will follow a jerkbait and actually get within inches of it, study it and get within inches of it and never hit the bait. And I think that if you knew how many bass actually were within a couple inches of your bait, you'd just be absolutely amazed. So what I like to do is I like to picture, those bass studying that bait once it's down in the maximum depth. And I want everything about that bait to give me that opportunity to generate that strike. And that comes from the red fingernail polish, roughing up the sides a little bit, and then working on my retrieve and my cadence, to generate that strike, which is, we'll talk about in another video. But anyway, just a few tips. Like I said, get you a Brillo pad, get you a little fingernail polish, maybe upgrade those hooks if you want the bait to sink a little bit. And I think it's going to add up for a few more fish with you in that cold water wintertime fishing. Thanks a lot.